Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is not just another breaking headline. It is a moment that redraws psychological red lines, challenges long-held assumptions, and strikes directly at the heart of power itself. Russia's red line broken flames inside Putin's fortress. For decades, the Kremlin has been portrayed as untouchable, a fortress at the center of a fortress city, a place protected not only by walls and weapons, but by fear, myth, and narrative control. Moscow was supposed to be different. War could happen elsewhere. Chaos could exist on the periphery, but the capital, especially the Kremlin, was sacred ground. That belief has now been shattered. What we are witnessing is not just damage to buildings. It is damage to confidence, authority, and perception. It is the moment when the idea of absolute security collapsed in front of the world, and when Vladimir Putin's carefully built image of control took one of its most serious blows yet. To understand why this moment matters so deeply, we need to understand what Moscow and the Kremlin represent in Russian political culture. Moscow is not just the capital of Russia. It is the emotional and symbolic center of the state. It is where power lives, where decisions are made, and where authority is constantly reinforced. From the Tsars to the Soviet leaders to Vladimir Putin, Moscow has been the stage on which strength is displayed and legitimacy is maintained. At the center of Moscow stands the Kremlin. More than a building, it is a symbol of continuity, dominance, and command. When Russians think of the state, they think of the Kremlin. When the world thinks of Russian power, it pictures those red walls and towers. That is why flames inside Putin's fortress carry a meaning far beyond physical destruction. For Vladimir Putin, power has always been about control. Control of territory, control of institutions, control of people, and above all, control of perception. From the very beginning of his rule, he presented himself as the man who restored order after chaos, the strong leader who ended the instability of the 1990s, the protector who would never allow Russia to be humiliated again. Security was the core promise. Russians were told that in exchange for political freedoms, they would receive stability. In exchange for obedience, they would receive safety. In exchange for silence, they would receive protection. This social contract held for years because Moscow remained calm, controlled, and secure. But when flames appear inside the fortress, the contract begins to break. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. For ordinary citizens, the images coming out of Moscow trigger fear and confusion. The capital was supposed to be the safest place in the country. If even the center is vulnerable, what does that say about everything else? Fear in authoritarian systems works in a specific way. People fear the state more than they fear chaos. But when the state appears incapable of protecting itself, fear begins to change direction. People start fearing instability, collapse, and uncertainty more than repression. That shift is dangerous for any regime. Inside Russia, the immediate reaction may not be protests. Fear and censorship are still powerful, but doubt does not need crowds to spread. It spreads quietly, in private conversations, in closed messaging apps, in the silence between official statements. People ask questions they were never meant to ask. How did this happen? Who failed? Was this avoidable? Is the leadership still competent? These questions are corrosive because they cannot be answered with slogans. For the political and security elite, the shock is even deeper. In Putin's Russia, loyalty is not ideological, it is transactional. Power, wealth, and protection flow downward from the center. In return, loyalty flows upward. But this arrangement depends on one crucial assumption, that the center is strong. When that assumption cracks, loyalty becomes fragile. Behind closed doors, officials are not thinking about patriotism. They are thinking about survival. They are calculating risks. They are watching closely to see who will be blamed, who will be sacrificed, and who will fall. Authoritarian systems respond to failure with scapegoats. Someone must pay. Someone must be punished to restore the illusion of control. That process creates paranoia. Paranoia leads to purges. Purges weaken institutions, and weakened institutions make future failures more likely. This is how power begins to consume itself. Historically, regimes rarely collapse because of a single event. They collapse because events like this accelerate existing weaknesses. Moscow in flames does not create doubt, it reveals it. It exposes vulnerabilities that were already there. Internationally, the consequences are equally profound. Russia has long relied on the perception of strength to shape global behavior. Military power matters, but perception matters just as much. Deterrence depends on credibility. Influence depends on the belief that a state can control escalation and protect its core. Flames inside Putin's fortress damage that credibility. Allies begin to question reliability. Rivals begin to reassess red lines. Neutral states reconsider how much weight to give Russian warnings and threats. This does not happen overnight, but it happens steadily. Power fades quietly when confidence is lost. For Vladimir Putin personally, this moment is deeply humiliating. Strongmen fear humiliation more than defeat. Defeat can be framed as temporary. Humiliation is visible, symbolic, and enduring. Putin's political identity is built around the image of a man who always anticipates threats and neutralizes them before they reach the center. Flames in the Kremlin area directly contradict that image. They suggest surprise, failure, and loss of control. Humiliation invites challenge, not necessarily from the public, but from within the system, from those who begin to wonder whether the leader can still protect them, from those who start thinking about succession, alternatives, and contingency plans. This is the moment when power becomes nervous. The Kremlin's response will be predictable: tightened censorship, controlled narratives. Investigations announced, arrests made for spreading panic. Official statements emphasizing resilience and unity. The state will try to project calm and strength, but control has limits. Images of fire cannot be erased. Fear cannot be fully managed. Once the idea of invulnerability is broken, it cannot be fully restored. This event also highlights the dangers of extreme centralization. When one man dominates decision-making, systems lose flexibility. Bad news is filtered. Honest assessments disappear. Advisors compete to tell the leader what he wants to hear rather than what he needs to know. Over time, the leader becomes isolated, not physically, but mentally. Reality reaches him late, distorted, and incomplete. When reality finally breaks through, it does so violently. Flames inside Putin's fortress are reality breaking through. For ordinary Russians, this moment adds another layer of anxiety to already difficult lives. Economic pressure, sanctions, isolation, and uncertainty have taken their toll. Now, the promise of security feels unreliable. People become cautious. They plan defensively. They lose faith in long-term stability. This quiet withdrawal of confidence is more dangerous than open rebellion. Authoritarian regimes depend on passive acceptance. When people stop believing, even silently, obedience becomes fragile. The symbolism of this moment will linger. Historians may one day mark it as a turning point, not because everything changed immediately, but because something irreversible happened. A psychological red line was crossed. The fortress was touched. Once a fortress is breached, even symbolically, it is never the same. Every future threat feels closer. Every failure feels larger. Every decision feels heavier. For Putin, the road ahead is narrow. Escalation risks further instability. De-escalation risks appearing weak. Repression risks deepening resentment. Each option carries costs. This is the paradox of power built on fear. It leaves little room to adapt. Russia's red line was broken not just by fire, but by exposure. Exposure of vulnerability, exposure of overconfidence, exposure of a system that believed its own myths. The world is watching closely, not with celebration, but with calculation. Moments like this reshape assumptions. They alter behavior. They change the way power is measured. This is not just a story about Moscow. It is a story about the limits of control, the fragility of authority, and the danger of believing that power is permanent. Flames inside Putin's fortress are a reminder that no system is untouchable, no image is unbreakable, and no leader is immune to the consequences of his own narrative. What comes next remains uncertain. And uncertainty is the most dangerous enemy of authoritarian power. Once people realize that red lines can be crossed, the future opens up in unpredictable ways. Russia's red line was broken, the fortress was breached, and the illusion of absolute control has been permanently damaged. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay alert, and I'll see you in the next video.